The Supreme Leader of Iran has been allowed to have 5 representative offices in England. They're in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle and Glasgow, right? And they don't beat about the bush, they say, the leader of the Islamic Centre of England in Kilburn in Maida for example, when he's appointed, he reads the letter that is appointed by the Supreme Leader of Iran. These are Supreme Leader's outlets in UK. Why is the UK government allowing a hostile state that gets its people to chant death to England every Friday, allowed to spread its network of influence and organise its influence in the UK?
For the wrong to rule, the good must just stand idly by.
زندگی آزادی، زندگی آزادی، زندگی.
The world is watching with dread and fear at the treatment of the Iranian people at the hands of the regime and the morality police. And I'm joined today by Potkin Azarmehr, who works as an investigative journalist and documentary maker and works for Monoto TV, which is banned in Iran, but is the most watched television station in Iran, which is quite funny. Potkin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Laurence. It's good to meet you in person.
Before we get into what's going on, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I came to this country when I was young. I went to a boarding school. I used to go to Iran for holidays and then in 1979, we were unfortunate enough to have this Islamic revolution where the Ayatollahs came to power and it became a religious dictatorship. I went a couple of times after the revolution, and then the last time I was there was when they were having this thing called Cultural Revolution, which basically meant they closed down all the universities for 2 years. They sacked all the secular students and lecturers and wrote the curriculum. And I remember on the plane when I was coming back, I thought, this is it. They're gonna control the schools, they're gonna control the universities, they're going to control people's brain, everyone's gonna be brainwashed. There is no chance. Iran is gone. And that was the last time I was in Iran. But I'm glad to see that I was proved wrong, and despite all the brainwashing, despite everything, we have this younger generation that are just saying it loud and clear. We don't want an Islamic Republic. We don't want political Islam. We don't want mandatory hijab. So it's very encouraging to see all this.
That's quite nice, isn't it? Because comparisons in this situation are really odious, but with the same sort of things happening in the West, with universities being taken over by all the institutions being taken over by a certain ideology. So we're getting a very soft version of what is in-your-face harshness. So what in terms of the Shah, why was he overthrown? What's their reason and what's your reason? What's the Islamic dictatorship's reason for overthrowing him, and what would be your reason?
Yeah, I mean, I was a critic of the Shah. You could say that at the time, maybe I would describe myself as a reformist. I didn't agree with everything that he did, but we had personal freedoms. No one told us how to dress and what to eat and what music to listen to, etc. We didn't have sort of like the political freedom, the sort of democracy in the West. But often people compared us with the Western countries instead of comparing us with the neighbouring countries. I mean, look who were our neighbours around the time of the Shah. I mean, during the first years of his reign, we had Stalin in the Soviet Union, and then later on we had Saddam Hussein, and we had in Pakistan, Afghanistan. Iran, if you compared it with the area, with the neighbouring countries, was so much far more advanced with everything else. And the Shah used to send all these students abroad on scholarships to universities, and they used to go to these European countries and used to come back and compare Iran with Switzerland, with France, and think, oh, well, they've got democracy there, we don't have democracy here, sort of thing. And a lot of them that were going to Western European countries, they were coming back and they'd sort of like turned left wing. And then what was crucial was the left and the Islamists going to bed together to overthrow the Shah.
Again happening now.
This is
the left and the wokies going.
When you said it earlier, you hit the nail on the head. And I always say to people, I see the same parallels in 1979. So you have the Islamists, you have the left, and you have the incompetency of the ruling class. And that was the other thing with the Shah's people. Unfortunately, he'd gathered a lot of sycophants around him.
You would if you're a Shah, wouldn't you?
And then they were too weak to deal with the revolution. All the time they tried to compromise and they tried to appease the revolutionaries, and they started giving concession after concession until it was too late. And they were the first ones to leave the country. They were the first ones to stab the Shah in the back.
With a suitcase full of money, no doubt.
Yeah, and I was saying, year 2000, I was in Speaker's Corner, and there was a few Islamists in Speaker's Corner, and one of them said something, and I challenged him, and then he came off and he said to me, "Take back what you said, or you see those sharp railings behind your head, I'm going to smash your head against those railings, and I don't care if I go to prison because I'm doing it for my religion." Wow. And I remember we were having because I was working on a Millennium Project at the time, and I was telling my project manager, I was saying, like, I'm a bit worried about the rise of Islamists in this country. And he laughed at me and said, that will never happen here. Whenever people say it will never happen here,
it always happens.
It raises the alarm bells in me, because that's when people don't take it seriously. That's when people become complacent. So I see a lot of parallels between what's happening in UK today and 1979. And it worries me, because this is my country now. You know, I've lived here most of my life. My children are born here. Their future is here. I love this country. It's given me so much opportunity. I'm grateful to this country, and I want to defend this country. I want to preserve the system that I've benefited from. So I'm worried, Laurence.
Yeah. Well, I think that's entirely justified to be worried, because we do have what seems to be a perfect storm happening, you know, like an incompetent ruling class, as you say, that's not willing to tackle the cultural issues. You've got a very determined and quite organised movement to...
I mean, look at today, you got delayed by the...
Just Stop Oil people, yeah. And as you said, if it had been a bunch of people protesting against Islamic extremism, the police would have moved you on in 2 minutes.
If me and you go and close the traffic down saying we're protesting against the rise of Islamic extremism in this country, boom, we'd be arrested in 2 seconds.
But yeah, that's the problem. One of my main fears in this world is politicised policing and politicised education, and we're doing stuff as an organisation to deal with that, because someone's got to do it. And as you say, the Tory party are too scared, they're already trying to dig us out of this massive stupid hole that they threw us in the first place in the last 2 years. So tell me, the Shah is overthrown by the religious extremists. Who is that first Khomeini?
Yeah.
Right, and what was his demand? What were the things that they were demanding that were getting appeased? And what percentage of the Iranian population are really fundamentalist Islamists?
I'd say in 1979, that was the sort of like the thinking of a large section of the population. Yeah. You know, the left-wing ideology, the Islamist ideology, it crept into the institutions. See, they took over the institutions. For example, I remember there was this organisation set up which produced books and things like that for children and teenagers and all that. And everyone in there were left-wings. And the book of the year was about this little black fish that wanted to take up arms and overthrow. And it was a completely Marxist left-wing book. Yeah. That was book of the year, produced and written by a Marxist writer and by an organisation that the Marxists had infiltrated in, and that was being presented to the children. So no wonder when those children grow up, they become left-wing and they become Marxist. So then Khomeini, but when he was in Paris, he was very clever. He knew when he should use people and when he didn't need them anymore. As soon as he didn't need people, he would ditch them. So first he gathered the nationalists, the Mossadeghists, the communists, the MEK, etc., etc. And then as soon as he realised, right, okay, I'm powerful enough, I don't need them, he ditched them one by one. So when he was in Paris, when France gave him asylum to go to France, the sort of things that he was saying were not as fundamentalist as what he intended to do, right? So, for example, he said, "Yeah, women should be free. They don't have to wear the hijab, and that sort of thing. And I'm just going to sort of like go to, be like some sort of like a pope sort of thing, not interfere in politics. Only, if they come to ask me for advice and everything." Once he came to Iran, and he took over the power, then one by one, he went back on what he said before, on his promises and everything, and he just turned the country into a completely Islamic state with the Sharia law and women having to. I mean, it took about a year to force women into wearing the hijab in Iran.
And how does that work? So in Iran you'd have a normal police force and then a morality police force. Is that correct?
Yes, so the morality police is different from the normal police. The morality police is specifically looking for people who are not observing the dress code as they want it, and they all the time they're just like nabbing people on the streets. They either like take a bribe and let them go, or they take them to these re-education centres, or they detain them. Or if some sort of violence erupts, then you don't know what's going to happen, and this is what's happened. So
I was told, am I correct? Because I'm just picking up fag ends from things that people have told me about this, and I'm in no way an expert. But I was told that a lot of the morality police are ex-convicts. Is that true? The
Islamic Republic is an expert in using thugs and hoodlums that it can arm them in when there's all like emergency situations. So when the protests happened, for example, and that was like that in the Cultural Revolution. I mean, I remember like I was just a teenager at the time, but for me it was so black and white at the time, and we'd gone with a few friends to defend the universities, we thought, and we were facing thugs and hoodlums. Even if we were tough kids at school, we couldn't match them. These were like proper thugs and hoodlums that they'd armed. And it does this all the time. It did this in the Green Movement. It did this in the last two major protests that erupted in Iran. When he thinks that he can't rely on the normal police and the anti-riot squads to crack down, it lets loose these thugs and hoodlums that are armed, and they can do all sorts of criminal things.
So what's going on at the moment, and we're watching these tragic deaths taking place.
Yeah.
The protest is young people talk. Mainly, it's about the hijab, is it?
No, it started off as a hijab, but make no mistake, what they're saying now is they don't want the Islamic Republic. I mean, you can see this in their slogans. So we don't want an Islamic Republic anymore. They're telling the mullahs to get lost. It's gone beyond that.
But that was the touch paper
that's what triggered it off. When Mahsa Amini was killed, see, Laurence, everyone in Iran knows either a relative or a friend who's been nabbed by the morality police.
Really?
Yeah, and they all think like, is my daughter, is my sister, is my wife going to be the next Mahsa Amini? And they had enough. So that was what triggered it off. But, even their own think tanks produced reports about 9 months ago saying that the society is about to explode. Right?
So their own
workshops, their own think tank. They were looking at what's happening, and they were saying like the people have had enough. It's about to the level of corruption, the level of tyranny, the level of poverty is just exploding the society, and he needed the trigger, and the death of Mahsa Amini was that trigger. But it's gone beyond that now. What is different this time? Because so we've had the since 1979 we had the student uprising in 1999. Unfortunately, that was only contained within the universities. It didn't. I think the public were too scared to embrace the students. The students couldn't take it to the public at the time. Then we had the Green Movement in 2009, but the leaders of the Green Movement were the reformist elements of the regime. So when they had 2 million protesters in the streets of Tehran, the leader of the Green Movement told them to go home. How can you tell them to go home? You've got 2 million people on the street. This is the time to take over now. Don't tell them to go home, sort of thing, And then we had 2 other major protests. One was about the fuel hike price and everything, and they got brutally cracked down. I think the international bodies that have looked at it, they put the numbers around about 1,500 killed. What is different about this one, although this is just as widespread as the last 2, 2 years ago and 4 years ago, this is more younger generation, much younger generation. I'm talking about school children. The protests are spread to schools. How can they control the schools now? They're going to send repressive forces to every school. They're going to kill school pupils. And what's the other different thing is that when they see the repressive forces, when they see the special units, the anti-riot crack squads and everything, they don't run away anymore. They take them on.
Yeah,
it's the anti-riot squads that are running away.
I've been watching. That's what I've been looking at. Yeah.
شهرستان کشمر مامور دارن به در میرن بکن بکنن
So you need two elements for a revolution to succeed. You need for the people to get to a stage where they're not scared of death anymore, and they take on the security forces, and also the lower ranks of the security forces don't obey the orders. I think we've more or less reached that stage. The other stage is when sections of the armed forces then join people, right?
Because they're frightened of what will happen if they don't.
Or they sympathise
Or they
with people.
agree
You know,
with them.
yeah. I mean, you know, the people in the police force, for example, I mean, they're not highly paid. You know, they have the same problems as the rest of the. And you know, the people on the street, they could be their relative, they could be their sisters, they could be their children. Their own children are telling them, like, you know, this is wrong, what you're doing, or a wrong sort of thing, like, you know. So at one point, we're hoping that they join them. Iran is unusual in the sense that it has two main armed forces. You've got the Revolutionary Guards. Often they call them IRGC, but the exact name for them are the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution.
So you've got two.
So you've got two armed forces, two major armed forces. Normally, I mean, you know, here you have an army, and that's it. You don't have a parallel thing to the army, for example. You might have special units within the army, but you don't have a parallel body that. So in Iran, it's not like that. It's two. So after the revolution, because they were fearful of the regular army, just in case there were still pro-Shah elements in there, they set up this other thing called what in the West you refer to as IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. The correct name for that is the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution. There's not even any Iran in it, right?
Right.
Their job is not to defend. Their job is to defend the regime, to defend the Islamic Revolution, and you've got the regular army whose still job is to defend the borders, and they're less ideological. So people are hoping that the regular army at some stage will join the people. You know, we're not talking about the top ranks. The top ranks are all appointed, they're more or less revolutionary guys. We're talking about the lower ranks, the conscript soldiers that are from the people. They have to go back after their 2 years of service and live amongst the people. They don't want to go there and say, like, I killed protesters. They want to say, like, you know, I stood up to the repressive forces, sort of thing. So I'm very hopeful. And if things change in Iran, so many other things will change, because the rise of the political Islam started with the 1979 revolution in Iran. Iran sort of like set the pattern in the region, and then it spread from the region. It's now come to Europe. It's become a homegrown problem, sort of thing, like, you know. The overthrow of the Islamic Republic will also set the pattern for the end of political Islam, just like communism in Soviet Union. When Soviet Union collapsed, communism collapsed around the world as well, because then people saw what was happening in the Soviet Union.
Or it got modified in terms of what China have done with their stakeholder capitalism version. Which
Yeah,
is,
yeah. But if the Islamic Republic collapses, I think
it'll send
all these
shockwaves.
misguided
Yeah.
people in the West, for example, who think that, you know, all political Islam will bring them, you know, this and that and everything, they will see the corruption, they will see the injustices that was happening in Iran, and I think that it will change their mindset as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
But having said all that, look at the situation we're in. So we got the Western governments. You would think that they would be supporting a change in Iran, etc., etc. Let's just talk about Britain. The supreme leader of Iran has been allowed to have 5 representative offices in England. They're in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, and Glasgow, right? And they don't beat about the bush, you know. They say, you know, the leader of the Islamic Centre of England in Kilburn in Maidavale, for example, when he's appointed, he reads the letter that is appointed by the supreme leader of Iran. These are supreme leaders' outlets in UK. Why is the UK government allowed?
Why is the UK government allowing it? Is it fear?
I don't know. I don't know if it's ignorance. I don't know if it's fear.
It can't be ignorance because, you know,
Well, someone from the UK government has got to come and explain why they've done it. I mean, we've written to our MPs. We've asked them to raise this question in the Parliament. No one's done it yet. Why is the UK government allowing a hostile state that gets its people to chant death to England every Friday, allowed to spread its network of influence and organise its influence in the UK? They've also got a charity, right? So according to the US sanctions, the supreme leader of Iran and anyone who's directly appointed by him should be under sanctions. One of the trustees of the charity of the Islamic Center is the head of the Islamic Center appointed by Supreme Leader. Why is the Charity Commissions allowing a hostile state to set up a charity and raise money within the UK?
Well, I mean, there's probably several reasons, but I think that you know, very soon after 9/11, we had any criticism of anything Muslim was called Islamophobia, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it immediately shut down debate, and obviously we've seen the repercussions of that in the UK in terms of police not dealing with child sex rape gangs and stuff like that because people are scared. I know that's actually a sort of a British-Pakistani problem more than it would be a British-Iranian problem. But I think this fear, there's a huge fear, which I find so weird, is whilst we're attacking our own culture and religion, which is, you know, the basis of our society is essentially a Judeo-Christian basis to society. We're attacking that relentlessly and trying to kill off religion and kill off the family and all these things. We're at the same time promoting other ideologies, and as you say, it's that perfect storm of the left, the hardline religions that cannot separate themselves from the state.
Just a warning for the left, though, because although they went to bed,
they get eaten first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They got annihilated in Iran. So if they think going to bed with Islamists will work to their favour, just look at what happened in Iran.
So we're about how many weeks in are we to this?
4 weeks.
4 weeks, we're a month in.
Yeah.
And are the protests growing?
The protests have spread to schools. Yesterday, there were reported strikes in petrochemical industry and the oil refinery. And there are cities in west of Iran, in the Kurdish regions, where the footage that's coming out shows all the shops shut. People have gone on strike. So there is hope that that may be the next stage. You know, on top of the protests, the ongoing protests, you know, we'll see like a total strike and shutdown. But everyone thinks like, this is it. We've got to go for a final push, whatever happens.
Yeah.
You know, I was speaking to people in Iran. They were saying, look, okay, we may die, but the alternative is that we have to live under this regime for many more years.
Yeah.
So, and we're not willing to do that.
Are they frightened? Do you think the regime are frightened?
Big time.
Big time.
Big time. But they learned from the Shah never to give any concessions. They know that if they start giving concessions, it will open the floodgate.
So they're going to brutally suppress.
Basically, they say, we will do everything that the Shah didn't do, and we will not do things that the Shah did.
Right.
Because, you know...
So that's crazy. So in terms of, you were talking about how poor people are in Iran as well. Is that down to the Iran deal, the American sanctions that are now...
Throughout all these protests, either the current ones or the ones that happened 2 years ago or the ones that happened 4 years ago, there's not one slogan against America. There's not one slogan against the sanctions, right? Everyone blames the Ayatollahs for mismanagement, right? I mean, these are illiterate people with fake qualifications. They don't know their left from their right, and they're ruining the country. They're ruining the environment. The pollution in Iran is one of the worst. Where is the Green Movement? Why aren't they talking about the Lake Urumia drying up or anything like that? You know, everything. I mean, say with the Soviet Union, it was a dictatorship, right? But you can say that there was certain things in the Soviet Union that, you know, were progressive and, you know, that were remarkable, like the sports, you know, the theatre, for example, ballet or something. They had some successes in some areas. The only thing that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been good at is its proxy groups and destabilizing the region. Nothing else. Nothing in Iran has progressed. No economy, no industry.
Well, they do want a nuclear weapon, don't they?
Yeah, and...
so, I mean, that would be progress on a very unwanted scale.
Well, yeah, progress in that way, yeah. But I was talking about like
cultural progress, as opposed
which is the other thing. I mean, like, even if they don't want nuclear weapons, right? You think, okay, so why do we want nuclear, even energy, right? The amount of money that's been spent on the nuclear plants in Bushehr, I mean, even if it finally becomes, I mean, normally it takes about 5 years, I think, to build a nuclear plant, maybe about 5 to 10 billion or something. This has cost the country huge, more than 20 billion. And if you add all the effect of sanctions, etc., it's been devastating for the country. And at the end of the day, the total electricity that will be produced by that plant will be 2% of Iran's electricity. Now, because of the decaying infrastructure in distribution of electricity, something like 60% of electricity is wasted. If they spend a fraction of that money on maintaining the infrastructure, renewing the electricity distribution infrastructure, they will save more electricity. We've got so many other sources of energy. You can't even justify nuclear energy, let alone nuclear weapon. But you can't even debate it. That's the thing. I mean, here you can debate. You can debate fracking. You can debate,
Well, you can now, but I'm worried that
it's going that way, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, actually, people will just they just use the word like it's harmful to debate.
And this is the other thing. See, until now, we've been able to sell the West to people in Iran because we can say, look, here you can have a debate. You can be pro, you can be against, and nothing will happen to you, and you will get airtime, and a debate will happen. Increasingly, it's becoming difficult to us to sell the West because all that is being cancelled here.
Tell me about it. It's terrifying to live.
We've had police brutality here, in Europe, in Holland, in France. They see images like that, and the Iranian regime is loving it. So, well, you think like I'm repressing people. Well, look at what's happening in France. Look at what's happening in Holland. Look at what's they're doing in UK and everything. So,
yeah, there was a good. There was quite talking about it being hard to sell the West. There was a really good Russian TV propaganda advert. Did you see that?
No.
It was on a plane. Have you seen that one? Yeah, put that in because it's really funny to watch. Anyway, it ends up with them just going how crazy the West has become. So, in terms of the young people, do you think that is technology play a factor? What's the censorship of stuff like? I mean, what's people's access to technology and global news and free thinking and the outside world in Iran?
Yeah, I think two things were pivotal in changing the mindset of the Iranian younger generation, especially. Was one, the advent of internet, and the other one was the satellite dishes. So until then, all the information was controlled by the state. You had the state TV and state news media and everything. Since 1998, 1999, so you had these like satellite stations outside Iran. And you had the internet and everything, and that opened up people's eyes.
Is it controlled internet in Iran? I mean, I was been watching, and they said they've shut down parts of Iran for the internet.
When protests flare up, they do that. So, I mean, access to internet is more or less restricted all the time, right? But people have managed to get around it by having VPNs, etc. They find ways of getting around it. It's never easy. But when things flare up, like protests and everything, they have a total shutdown.
Where's Elon Musk when you need him?
Well, the thing with
he was giving Starlink to Ukraine, wasn't he?
Yeah, but what I understand of Starlink is you need the state to allow to have the equipment to send and receive the things. So if the state isn't allowing you to have those equipment within the country, or it can locate it very easily, pinpoint, say, okay, someone's using this Starlink equipment, then that doesn't work.
Okay, so it's impossible to get internet access to people who are protesting. But
the thing is, it's not without cost to them. Every time they shut down the internet, I mean, it costs the business money. It costs a lot of money for people that are like using, selling things on Instagram, on whatever. So it's not without cost to them. So it's not something that they can do all the time. But look, we didn't have internet in 1979. People will find a way to get around it.
Yeah.
The other thing we got to ask is, where are all these news agencies? Where are all these like AP, Reuters? They got offices. Why are they not reporting from Iran?
Why are they not reporting?
I don't know.
Well,
they're always reporting from Gaza, from Palestine, everything. But when it comes to Iran, even the footage that we get for them, like even if it's just like a harmless footage to some Iranian official like having a press conference or something, because we subscribe to AP and Reuters, one of the TV stations I work with, it says on there, this footage must not be used by BBC Persian, Manoto TV, Voice of America, Persian services.
Why?
So that's their condition of being in Iran. And they compromise on that. They give in to that. They said, okay, so we're allowed to have our offices here, but then again, it's against this what do you call it? This gutlessness of the Western leaders. I mean, coming back to these supreme leaders' outlets, now, the British government hasn't been able to reopen the British Council in Iran. Right? Why is the supreme leader having so many charities and outlets and everything, and colleges and institutes? I've actually done a proper paper on the network of influence of the Iranian regime, and it's frightening.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not just like 1 or 2, 3 centres.
And you talked about the fact that these mullahs and the ayatollahs, these people are illiterate in every way other than Islam. So have they been educated in like madrasas and things like that? Is that, or what's the Iranian equivalent of that?
The seminary schools, yeah. Right. I mean, one of the recent investigations I did was this like network of fake colleges that Iranian regime has set up. Some of them were set up here in the UK. There's one called London Modern Sciences College, right? Totally fake. I mean, if you just go to their website, you'll see this is completely fake. And they're handing out qualifications to Iranian officials and everything. Again, they've been able to set up companies here, and and the network then sort of goes to other countries as well. It really is a group of thugs taking over a country that are not fit to rule. They're not fit to manage, and they're mismanaging everything.
And the people are now saying no. So what's your prediction? What's going to happen? What will happen with the?
I think at a minimum, we can say it's the end of morality police. I mean, morality police hasn't been seen in the last 4 weeks.
Really?
They've gone into hiding. You don't see mullahs on the street in their traditional robes and everything. Right? They've gone into hiding. Right? I think at a minimum, we can see the end of morality police and the end of mandatory hijab.
Okay.
Even if they don't change the law, it'd be like the satellite, because like by law you can't have satellite dish or receiving equipment, but everyone's got it, so they just can't enforce it. So even if they don't change the law, they won't be able to enforce mandatory hijab anymore. At a maximum, I'm very hopeful that this is the end of the regime. And even if they manage to crack down this time, then there'll be another bigger wave next time.
Who would replace the regime? Who are the leaders of the opposition?
Right, so fortunately, see, unlike what happened I know a lot of the Western leaders, they're worried about like, oh, we don't want Iran to end up like Syria or Libya and another unstable country and everything. But the opposition were Islamists to secular dictatorships, right?
Yeah.
So here,
we're fortunate. Is secular.
It's secular and very Westernized and very pro-West, very pro-Israel. And we're fortunate enough to have leaders that have automatic legitimacy that can lead that transition period, just like Czechoslovakia. So, see, when a regime falls, you can't have elections straight away, can you? So you've got to have like leaders that everyone accepts, no one criticizes, no one is against, that can lead that transition period. So in Czechoslovakia, you had Dubček, you had Václav Havel, everyone loved them sort of thing, and they led the transition period. And we've got those people in Iran that can lead the transition period, and then once the institutions are set up, there'll be like a democratic election. You can't have organised parties in Iran right now. That's why when the Western leaders say, oh, what's the alternative? There isn't a political... Of course you can't have a political party within Iran, within a dictatorship. But we're fortunate enough to have those leaders who have automatic legitimacy to lead the transition period, and then they will set up the institution, there will be political parties will form, and then there'll be an election, and then Iran will be a shining example of secular democracy in the region, and it will change the region.
The entire
just like
of the region. So
actually reverse of 1979.
So if the regime falls in Iran, what will happen to the neighbouring countries?
I think Iraq will be more stable because it's seeing so much interference from Iran. Same thing in Afghanistan. I think. Because I believe that it'd be more prosperous and it'd be more progressive. People
it's got a lot of oil, Iran, doesn't it? Lots of oil.
Look, we've got. My least worries is about the natural resources of Iran that they've wasted, because we can always have that back. Yeah. Right. It was the human intellect that we lost, the brain.
The brain power. If you suppress people into an ideological pattern, they stop thinking.
Exactly.
They're not knowing how to think.
And I think people in the neighbouring countries, then they will say, look, Iranian people got rid of political Islam. They took on the path of secular democracy, and they became more prosperous. And we should go that way as well. It will change their minds as well.
So, you talk about political Islam. So political Islam is different from just someone. I mean, what you're saying then is it's a group thing, political Islam. Whereas individual religious faith is still strong in Iran, or are people becoming more secular, or they?
Oh, people are lots less religious than 43 years ago.
Right.
I think one of the things about mixing religion and state is that it actually damages religion, because the failures of states are then attributed to the failure of the religion. And this is what some of the Muslim leaders who are not political, they've been arguing from day one. The other ayatollahs who were against Khomeini, they were saying, look, if you mix politics and religion, it will damage religion as well, because there will be corruption, there will be failures, and then that will all get attributed with religion.
We've got a soft version of that going on.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in Iran, people, I can say that, are the least religious people in the Middle East and in any Islamic country. But at the end of the day, you can never, until there's death, there'll be religion. You can't get rid of religion. They didn't manage to do it in the Soviet Union. 70 years of an atheist state, but people were still...
Until there is no death, there will always be
exactly,
religion.
because
really
people... No, seriously, because people always wonder, they want something to be there to understand. There will be religious... And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with people having spiritual faith, so long as they keep it to themselves, so long as they don't enforce it on other people. Look, I went to Israel to make a documentary about water management in Israel, right? And I had a hotel in Tel Aviv, just opposite the beach, and where I come from in Iran is by the Caspian Sea. I love the sea, I love the beach and everything. And I had a meeting at 10 o'clock. I got up early, had breakfast, and I wanted to go to the beach. So I went straight down the beach, no left or right, just straight down. And suddenly I noticed there was something weird about it. I couldn't see what it was. There was some writing in Hebrew, but I couldn't read it. And then I heard someone shouting from a watchtower, and I thought, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. He can't be with me. But then he kept on shouting and waving at me, and I said, sorry, I don't speak Hebrew. And he came down. He said, I'm sorry, but this is a women's only beach. And I looked round. And I said, oh, these Orthodox women and all that. I walked into a women's only beach. But next to that beach was a normal beach, women in bikini mixed with men and everything. And that was the thing that was impressive about Israel for me. You can be anything in Israel. You can be gay, you can be transgender, you can have a woman's beach. You want a woman's beach? We give you a woman's beach. Yeah. But you don't go and tell the other people that they should do what you do. So long as you don't harm other people, you can. In the middle of Tel Aviv, I'd walk into a shop and there was T-shirt, Free Palestine. It's okay. You can have Free Palestine. In the middle of Tel Aviv, I heard the azan, the Muslim call for the prayers from a mosque. As long as you don't enforce what you believe on others, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. You want to be a Muslim, you want to pray 5 times a day at home and have spiritual faith, I respect that.
And is that what? Do you think that's what Iran should model itself on?
I think every country should be like that.
Yeah,
spirituality and politics are two different things. Once you mix them, it's a disaster. Look, Europe has had that experience in the Middle Ages, with the church state and everything.
But it reformed.
But it reformed.
The religion reformed.
And it's time for the Islamic countries to reform, and I think Iranian people would lead that.
That's a real optimistic thing. Tell me about Monoto. So it's banned, Monoto TV, but it's the most popular station in Iran. Yeah,
I mean, basically anything that's not under state control with regards to information is banned and is frowned upon. Monoto started in 2009 as an entertainment TV, and it quickly became the most watched TV in Iran because the state TV was just, just so glum and boring and thing. And then the other TV stations, you had BBC Persian, Voice of America Persian, and they were not really television. They were more like radio, but with a picture. You had one person speaking, and then he'd open up the telephone lines, and the highlight of the program would be if someone on a live program called in and started swearing or something. Everyone would laugh, sort of thing. And Monoto was like a normal TV. It had entertainment programs similar to Come Dine With Me, similar to X Factor. It had news, it had documentaries, it had cooking programs. And that's why it quickly became the most watched TV station in Iran, and it's remained popular because it's not affiliated with any government as well, so people trust it very much as well. And it's been very, very effective in changing the mindset of the people in Iran.
Well, this is what I'm really fascinated by in terms of media and culture, you know, and that Breitbart line of politics being downstream of culture. So it's incredible that that a TV station can do that, affect the culture, and then the culture can affect the politics, which is a good thing, I think. How does it manage to broadcast in Iran if it's banned?
So it's via satellites. As I said before, by law in Iran, satellite dishes and any receiving equipment, receiving equipment is banned.
But because there's so much of it, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean,
where's it broadcast
if
from?
If you ever watch Iran state TV, you'd understand.
Why
You've got to have a satellite dish because this will just kill you watching this.
I can just picture what the state TV looks like. And so where's that broadcast from?
So it's broadcast from studios in South London. You remember The Bill, the police series? It's the same studios.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it'd be good if you come there one day and have a look at it. Yeah.
I'd love to broadcast into Iran. I've got some mates who would say, you know, whose family fled after in 1979, and they just talk about how beautiful the country is and how incredibly stunning it is, and you know, all they ever say is you'd love to go there. The people are amazing. Just
the income from tourism would be massive because it's got everything. So we've got a beautiful sea to the north. We've got beautiful beaches in the south. We've got mountains. We've got ski resorts. We've got deserts. We've got forests. We've got 4 seasons. You know, on the same day in Iran, you can go skiing and you can go sunbathing. It's got 2,500 years of history. Yeah, it's it'd be a top touristic resort if it opens up.
I would love to go there, especially with the history and all that.
You never know. Maybe one day we'll do this in Iran. Yeah, and then like that, wouldn't that be amazing?
Do you think I can come and broadcast into Iran?
Why not?
I would love to do that.
Why not?
I'd love to speak to. Do you have back and forth people speaking from there on the TV, or is it mainly?
No. We do. Yeah.
I'd love to do that. Potkin, thank you so much for giving us
thank you, Laurence,
educating me who knows nothing about Iranian politics to know a bit more about it, and for everyone else who is in the same boat as me.
It's been great for you to have given me this opportunity to speak about Iran, but I'm also grateful to have met you, because I agree with so much of what you say, and the things that you're trying to do, because I worry just as much as you do about what's happening in this country.
Yeah.
And hopefully...
Well, as you say, you can't divide people down such stupid things like immutable skin colour. It's like, go away.
The best way to tackle racism is to stop going on about it, for God's sake. Look, when I see someone, it's like their skin colour for me is like the colour of their eyes. Yeah. It doesn't concern me. Like I look at them.
99% of the population,
exactly.
that is true
as well.
That is
the truth, yeah.
And so we're being run by
that 1%
of actual racists.
Yeah.
Who really are racist, and they walk around.
They're the real racists, because they keep going on about it, like, you know.
When are people going to wake up to all of that?
I don't know.
Because we're in a collective mass formation psychosis of all of this stuff, and we hammered to divide. But we do have a problem. You know, we have this situation in which really got right up my nose in Batley and Spen. You know, this teacher who showed a picture of the Prophet as part of a blasphemy class, and he wasn't showing it to wind the kids up. He was saying, now we're not allowed to show this picture because it offends Muslims. What do we think? And, you know, obviously you saw what happened. His school was mobbed and he's now in hiding. So essentially Sharia law has been imposed in small parts of northern England already.
The government institutions have let people down. They've not protecting. The government's main role is to protect its citizens. Yeah. It's given into mob rule.
Yeah.
And the question these people have to ask themselves, the people that say this country is so bad and this country is so racist and all this nonsense and everything, look, if it's so bad, why do so many people want to come here? Why doesn't anyone want to go to Iran or to
China?
You don't find if it's so bad, why is everyone coming on boats to this country? I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It baffles me. I can't believe we're so affluent and glib and arrogant that we think that we can now dispose of the past for some new woke anti-free expression, all of this stuff. in the name of what is so-called progress, but it's not progress, it's absolute regression. And, you know, here is an example of what happens when that goes way too far. And look, it's 43 years now of it. 43 years of oppression, suffering, death and murder, and we don't want that across the West. So thank you for giving us a clarion call.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Potkin, pleasure
Cheers.
to meet you,
Thank
my
you,
brother.
Laurence.